Marcelo Palacios, President of the Scientific Committee of the SIBI and the Organizing Committee of this Congress, and it is a pleasure to introduce to you the first talk for this afternoon. Well, first the chair, Dr. Edgar Antonio Madrid from Mexico. He has a PhD in philosophy at the Autonomous University of Nuevo León, professor in Thetis University, and expert in policies of welfare. And he will introduce Dr. Rojas, Aifutaki, and Andrea Maria Lactis. Good afternoon, Mr. Edgar. Thank you very much for being here this afternoon. I am sure you will give a different approach regarding the topic of our content of our Congress. Thank you very much for being here, and greetings to Mexico. Yes, thank you very much to everybody. It is a pleasure to be here with you, and we will start with this roundtable, a very interesting roundtable, addressing topics that have to do with different scientific issues regarding ethics, and more specifically, we will have a look at topics that have to do with biotechnology, environmental impact of scientific research and actions. So we will start with the talk by Dr. Alma Hernandez Rojas. She is from Spain, and she works for the Oceanographic Center of Gijón. She has a degree in biochemistry. She is doctor in microbiology and molecular biology. She will introduce a topic entitled Marine Biotechnology Solutions for Productivity and Ocean Sustainability. I will now give the floor to Alma Hernandez. Thank you very much, Edgar, for your kind introduction. So firstly and foremost, thank you very much to the International Organization of Bioethics for inviting the Oceanographic Institute to participate in this Congress, and especially also thank you to Mr. Palacios for his interest in the work that we do in our center. Also, Beatriz and Luis, thank you very much for your work organizing this Congress. As Dr. Edgar mentioned, I am Alma Rojas. I am a scientific, and I am working at the Oceanographic Center of Gijón. In our research group, we work to develop different functional diets, including microorganisms to increase and improve the health of fish. I will start my talk on how to apply marine biotechnology in terms of solutions for productivity and sustainability of our oceans. I cannot see the presentation, says the speaker. Well, the image you see here to the left is the one we know of our Earth planet. In fact, the astronauts have called it a blue planet due to the blue color that is the main color. As we all know, this color is due mainly to the existence of oceans on Earth. Oceans represent 70% of our planet, the surface of our planet, and therefore it is the greatest ecosystem of the planet. Furthermore, in this ecosystem, we have 38% of species or living organisms on Earth, and we have more than 400,000 species altogether. The importance of ocean in the human being lives is unquestionable. 38% of the worldwide population lives less than 100 kilometers away from the coastline. Therefore, oceans are one of the main sources of a living source. Economy of the oceans, 61% of the worldwide GDP comes from the ocean and coast line or coastal areas. And oceans are the main source of proteins for more than 30% of world population. However, we only know a very small part of its biodiversity. In fact, it is calculated that 90% of biodiversity of our oceans is still unknown. How have we discovered this biodiversity? Well, the trip by Darwin in 1821 on the Beagle ship, this was the first time the human being made an effort to get to know this biodiversity. In fact, after this trip and for most of the 19th century, marine organisms were cataloged and registered, and other mapping was also drafted. Some years after, with the Challenger, well, it provided much more knowledge to the one initiated by Darwin. In fact, this expedition covered 130,000 kilometers and discovered 750 new genera and 4,419 new species. So many organisms were recollected that all the collections gave way to 75 following years of research. Currently, and thanks to new technologies to explore oceans and projects like the ones that I share here with you, Census of Marine Life, in 2010, this was set up. This is when we have a better understanding of the whole marine biology. In this project, for example, in 10 years of life of the project, 6,000 new species have been identified. This project, so that you can understand the scope, 2,700 scientists have participated from all over the world, 9,000 days out in the sea, plus days in the lab, more than 540 expeditions. Right now, we also have platforms like the ones you have here on the slide, OBIS. And what do they do? Well, they include all the information resulting from these expeditions, and they gather all this information. And the main aim is the scientific study and conservation or preservation of biodiversity. This platform is free access. Any of you can access the platform for free and have a look at the databases. And it has more than 155,075 species in the data banks. So that you can understand the potential of biodiversity in our oceans. Life started more than 4,000 million of years ago. 3,000 million of years were for the development. That's when life really started to cover the terrestrial part of our planet. This the duration of evolution resulted in the fact that the ecosystems hosted the development of life, and marine ecosystems are very changing, are very diverse, very different one from each other, and there an increase in biodiversity occurred. Just as a matter of examples, out of the 36 phylum known, 13 are only found in the ocean, and 34 phylum share life in the ocean or on the earth. So some of them are known as terrestrial phylum. So we can see that most of the biodiversity is found in our oceans. On this slide, I wanted to share with you how knowledge has been developed in terms of biodiversity of oceans. As I mentioned before, from Darwin's expedition or trip in 1830 to current times, thanks to the process of scientific evolution and technological evolution. For example, appearance of sonars, submarines that are led or guided, and also with the PCR. As you know, the PCR was invented in 1833 by Caribbean scientists. This invention was due thanks to a polymerase that comes from a marine microorganism. So as you can see, how a marine microorganism has given way to a technology, PCR, that has become a revolution in our research system. In fact, from the PCR onwards, our knowledge on biodiversity has grown exponentially. For example, currently, thanks to the omic techniques, synthetic techniques, and with the support of biocomputing, we can study the whole genetic potential of our oceans. As I was mentioning, biodiversity is understood not only from the point of view of animals or species that are found in an ecosystem, but also from the point of view of genetic diversity. And probably genetic diversity is much more relevant than the animals that are found in a certain ecosystem. And this genetic diversity has supported the development of marine biotechnology. For example, in marine ecosystems, it was thought that microorganisms were just a proof, but there was no material life. And with the support of all these tools, biotechnological tools, we have been able to discover that the traditional culture techniques only revealed 1% of all the microorganisms found in the oceans. At present, we know and we are aware that most of the genetic biodiversity that exists in oceans and also terrestrial ecosystems comes from microorganisms. This genetic biodiversity is so important that the Nagoya Protocol was signed in Japan in 2010 in the city of Nagoya in Japan. The countries that endorsed the protocol committed to have a fair participation of all the benefits coming from the use of those genetic resources. I have not covered yet anything to do with the term of marine biotechnology. Out of all the definitions that we may find in the literature, journals, etc., in my opinion, the most accurate or fortunate definition is the following by the OECD. It is the Organization for the Economic Cooperation and Development in 2013. The use of marine biological resources as an objective or source of biotechnological applications. It is also called blue biotechnology. If you have a look at literature talking about marine biotechnology, in most of the books they present this pattern or this graph. Here they try to represent the great potential or capacity of marine biotechnology to improve the life of human beings. As you can see, the development of different biological tools allow us to obtain products that are profitable and that can be used, and in fact, they are used in different fields. And at the same time, these products are used in different services. Some of them are, for example, bioremediation, basic research, ecosystem management, and that allows for new products because they support the preservation of the marine environment. Among the different applications we may find, we may highlight the obtention of marine products that are natural and they are used in medicine. For example, marine sponges are an endless source of bioactive molecules, and they have an important application in biomedicine. For example, most treatments against HIV come from these kind of organisms. Other applications to obtain other marine nutraceutic compounds, for example, algae, etc., etc. So you can have these kind of nutraceutic compounds that are used in the food industry. Another application is to obtain biomaterials. For example, in biomedicine, for example, for the bone grafts, but also filaments for the 3D printing or to obtain nanomaterials. Probably you already know this application, bioenergy. On the basis of microalgae, you can obtain other compounds that are more environmentally friendly. And as I mentioned before, you can also apply it to marine bioremediation. For this, you use marine microorganisms that can biodegrade a great amount of pollutants. And finally, aquaculture. As I mentioned before, our working group is devoted to the application of biotechnology in the field of aquaculture. I'm going to focus now on this because we do not have much time left. Before talking about the projects that we are launching or drafting, I'd like to highlight the importance of aquaculture in the development of the human species. As you can see here on this graph, well, this graph is also in the latest report by FAO. It is a report on the world status on fishing and aquaculture. And here you can see that during the years from 68 to 2001, the increase in consumption of fish worldwide has surpassed the increase of the worldwide population. We may also say that this in relation to aquaculture is important because for more than 40% of worldwide population, it means the obtention of proteins of more than 20% of the animal proteins in terms of the uptake. One of the main challenges for humanity in the next 50 years is to feed the more than 9,000 million people inhabiting the planet by 2050. How can we address this challenge? Well, one of the tools available is aquaculture, or the culture of marine organisms, either animal organisms or plant organisms. In this slide, you can see the relevance worldwide of aquaculture as from 2012, world production of aquaculture started to surpass fishing production. In 2018, this difference is quite important, as you can see there on the slide. The increase in terms of aquaculture production is due to the application of marine biotechnology. And undoubtedly, it will be fundamental in the future to develop this activity further and to respond to that challenge. How can we apply, or how can marine biotechnology be applied to aquaculture? I mentioned already the landmark, the revolutionary landmark that resulted in a marathon, that has been the development of new biotechnological tools. These tools can be applied to aquaculture, for example, to diagnose new conditions by means of probes, development of new vaccines based on DNA, recombinant DNA technology, nutrition by adding new ingredients, probiotics, for example, genetic improvement of the cultured species. And although this is quite controversial, the use of genetic modification of fish, the use of genetically modified animals. The consequence of it all is that the development of the aquaculture products. Out of all these applications, I will focus on nutrition because our research group is an expert on nutrition. In the research lines that we carry out in terms of nutrition related to aquaculture, well, we have two different research lines. One, the use of algae biomass to be included in foodstuff. My colleagues, Elena and Marta, are working on that. They are working in the plant of Mazarrón, and they are developing the so-called Project Alafis. So they are evaluating the effects of the inclusion of microalgae in the growth, development, and resistance of the inclusion of microalgae in the specific species. In our center, in the Oceanographic Center of Gijón and the one in Santander, we developed the Project Alga Diet to try to evaluate the use of microorganisms in the diet of the turbot. Right now, we are working now already on Alga Diet 2 because we add in probiotics now as well. If you allow me, I'm going to go a little bit more in detail regarding Algae Diet 2 so that, you know what we are committed to in terms of sustainable aquaculture. This project is being developed thanks to the collaboration of Foundation Biodiversity, from the Ministry for the Ecological Transition through the program Play Amar, co-funded by the FEMP. In this project, we will study the effect of the foodstuffs that we are studying when adding microalgae in terms of the growth of the turbot, the effect on their health, the nutritional status, the weight, the size, how it affects the immunological status, the bowel histology, bowel microbiota, metabolism, stress, etc. And of course, this fish is going to be destined for human consumption. So we have to study whether when adding these microalgae, there is a certain effect on our perception when eating this fish. In terms of sensorial analysis and nutritional analysis, this turbot, we studied the inclusion of microalgae. You see here the list of microalgae. They are marine microalgae, also algae from fresh water, and also an alga that we culture in the center in Santander. We observed that the optimal inclusion percentage was 5% in terms of microalga and macroalga. So we used this 5% of inclusion, but we used it to see whether these foodstuffs are optimal and they can be used to feed these fish, the turbot. So the experiment was carried out for 6 months because that is the period they need to reach the marketing size, so to speak, 500, 700 grams more or less. The results of this project with the turbot, well, we are analyzing right now all the samples gathered this year, and we're going to start the second year of the experiment. We're going to use only the food stuff with microalgae because this microalgae was the one providing a greater benefit to animals. And also we could see that on a nutritional and sensorial level, we could see a great benefit. So this is the food stuff we're going to use, and we're going to assign 2 types of probiotics. One of them belong to the lactic bacteria, Lactococcus lactis and Lactobacillus plantarum, and the other one would belong to the negative gram, which is Shewwanella putrefaciens. It belongs to the Shewwellenacea. They are marine microorganisms. This microorganism has been isolated at the University of Malaga by the research group led by Dr. Miguel Ángel Uribido. He liked our initiative and he wanted to try this microbiotic to see if it would be effective on this food stuff. Our aim is to see whether those foodstuffs with probiotics and algae provide benefits to animals in terms of their health and the welfare of the animals. That also has to do with the ethics of culture. We want animals to be cultured in an intensive way, but likewise, they have optimal conditions of welfare. And also, another aim is to try to reduce the use of antibiotics. Finish. Let me summarize briefly what we expect from marine biotechnology in this century. The century already started 20 years ago. Firstly, what is expected is that biotechnology is capable of addressing all the global challenges, the ones we are going to challenge in the future years. They are the ones related to the health and human welfare, industrial biotechnology, food provision, and also environmental sustainability. Above all, sustainability of our oceans. But let's not forget the financial side of it all, no? Because it will allow to boost economy in a significant way. Also, it will allow for the creation of new jobs, qualified jobs, and they will be very important for the value chain. They will also allow for a growing investment in marine biotechnology. And finally, research in marine biotechnology will also face growth thanks to the economic funding or the funding received by bodies, governments, entities, or private institutions. And that is all from me. Thank you very much for listening to me. And again, thank you very much to the International Society of Bioethics for having given me this opportunity. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Alma. And in a few seconds, we will have Mr. Marcelo Palacios, who will be introducing the next speaker.
Muchas gracias, estimado.
Thank you very much, my dear Edgar. Yes, just a few seconds indeed to greet Ai Futaki, our beloved friend, who will be intervening soon. Her beautiful pictures and videos are being exhibited here at the conference center for people, for visitors to enjoy them and sometimes to worry about. Secondly, I would like to thank Andrea from Argentina, and I wish both of you and both your countries all the best. I hope that all of us exit and leave this terrible pandemic behind. Thank you very much. You have the floor.
Hola.
Hello. Shall I start my presentation?
Sí, por favor.
Yes, please.
Ok. Bueno.
Great. So I'm going to share my screen. %70 of the world is the ocean, but we don't know it very well. So I would like to share with you how important it is, what the connection is between human beings and water. As you can see here, I don't have a bottle, an oxygen bottle underwater. I do free diving. I do apnea because that is the most natural way to be in the water. I'm being just another mammal in the water. I am one of them. I connect with them by not using an oxygen bottle. Apnea means, or free diving means, not breathing underwater with any artificial mechanism, just holding your breath underwater. I broke 2 Guinness records for free diving, and I have swam the longest distance in a cave by free diving. I was the first woman to do this in the world. This was 90 meters. That was the first human in the world to ever accomplish this. I did that not because I wanted to show off or to feed my ego, but rather to speak out. The aim here was not just free driving or apnea. I'm not looking to hold my breath for the longest time possible or to go as deep as possible. I use apnea as a tool. I use it as a tool to be underwater. I never use an oxygen bottle because if I do so, when I breathe, there's a noise and there are bubbles as you inhale and exhale. So, yes, you get to be longer underwater and observe what's happening around you, but you don't really enter, you don't join them in the world. And that's why I use free diving. And I would like to tell you that the human being is the only terrestrial mammal that holds their breath and swims underwater, and the body reacts and it changes as if it were a dolphin, as if it were a marine mammal. So we have that reaction in our bodies, and it's not a conscious one. It just happens. It's automatic when you go underwater. So we were born with this ability, with that connection with water. But we're not doing it. If we want, we can. And if we let go, if we let ourselves flow, we can achieve this. So freediving is 99% about the mind. And the brain uses 20 to 30% of the entire body oxygen. So what I do when I'm underwater is I just switch off. What does that mean? That means that I'm not in the past or in the future. I am here and now in the present. Because we only have one breath underwater. So as long as you hold your breath, why thinking? Why worrying about what I'm going to have for dinner, or I have to send this message, I have to email that person? Underwater, we focus in living the present time. And by doing that, we can observe what's happening around us. And also, before being born, we were in the ocean of our mother's womb. So it's like going back to our origin. And free diving is like meditation underwater. So that's when I'm most relaxed and when things just flow. And this picture here, it seems that it's been photoshopped with two different pictures, but it's not. It's a real photograph. It looks strange because the shark's fin was closer to the camera, and with the flash, it looks somewhat strange, but it is a real picture. And you're probably wondering, is she frightened? Is she afraid? No, because vibration travels 4 times faster underwater than on the ground. So if I'm afraid, they notice that. So in nature, being afraid means I'm your food, eat me. So what I do is just be relaxed, be calmed, and being in peace and harmony. That's how I feel and how I am underwater. Also, it's their place, it's their home. We have our home on the ground. And when you go to someone else's place, you probably don't just walk in out of the blue and with your dirty shoes. So what I do here is the same that I do when I go to someone else's house or place. I introduce myself. We don't speak the same language, but I let them know who I am and I show them my respect for their life. Because their life is more complex than ours. Because if we're hungry, we can go to a restaurant or go to a shop and buy something. But they cannot do that. If they're hungry, they have to look for the food. They have to hunt it, and they have to uh, feed their children, so to speak. So if they're busy, I'm not going to chase them. I'll respect them and I will try and find a different opportunity at a different time. So I think that when I respect them, they respect me. This is the next picture. Once they have accepted me, I can become part of them. On this picture, it's a pity that I cannot show you, but these are 13 whales, hunchback whales. So this picture I didn't get overnight. I had to spend 4 5 years going to the same place. This is a country called Tonga in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, near New Zealand. And this is where these hunchback whales travel to from the Antarctic. They travel north in winter and they stay there for around 3 months, and their um that's where their children grow. And what they're doing on that picture, those are 13 male whales, and in front of them is a female whale. So they are saying, I'm the best one, choose me. So they didn't really mind that I was there with them. They were minding their own business. But they're like a big plane. They're like a jet airplane. They're huge. So it's like a huge buzz buzzing past you on a highway. They do swim really fast. So they have to be one. It's like a ship and a captain. It was the same for me. I had to step in the best time possible, and I had to be skilled to be able to photograph them at the perfect time. Also, the currents had to uh, flow in our favor, so to speak. So there were a lot of things involved. And I believe in the things that you can't see. We have to find a connection. We have to focus on one thing and it'll work. If you think that you're having a bad day, you just want to go home, then it's not going to happen. That magical time is just not going to take place. This picture here is this is a seawolf from Mexico. They're like little dogs. They want to play around. They're really playful, and they play with me. But at that time, at the same time, they were taking care of me because I cannot swim as fast as them, and I cannot hold my breath for as long as they do. So it was really funny. They were treating me as if I were their little sister. Here I am again with the hunchback whale. So sea wolves are like little dogs. I would say that whales are like grandparents. They are wise and, that kind of things. So whenever I swim that close to a whale, and when I look into their eyes, I feel that they're not seeing me. They're just not seeing me from the outside. I feel that they're looking into me. I feel that I cannot hide anything from them. And when I swim next to them, when I see their eyes, I feel that their eyes are telling me, you have to be honest. You have to pursue the truth. That's what I feel whenever I look into their eyes. On this picture, I don't think there's much to explain. I see love. I see a mother taking care of the baby, and the baby is has such a strong bond with their mother, and there they are together. And whenever I'm in that situation, I always think, what about us? What about our world? Because in our world, it's really easy. Everything is convenient and simple. We have a lot of ways to communicate. For example, I'm sitting somewhere else in the world and we're still connected online. We can use our telephone, we can text each other. But I feel that the most important thing we have forgotten somewhere. So my mission is to act as a bridge between the underwater world and us humans, and also to reconnect that distant world with uh, the nearby world. Two worlds that are far apart from each other, but still so close to each other. And I think that changing something has to begin from the inside. You cannot force someone to change. By that, I mean that if you want to change something, you need to change it in your heart, inside of you first. And that's why I believe in the strength of pictures. I'm also on the pictures myself, but that's not because I want people to see me. I want people to dive with me, to swim with me, to experience all of that with me. So with the pictures, my intention, what I want is for the animals to talk to the people in a way. So I believe that my job is acting as a seed, as a key into everyone's heart. So my message is that nature or this planet is part of us and we are part of the planet. We are not the owners. We don't own the planet. So we have to live together. What can we do to live together? That is the message that I want to send through my activities. We're living here on the ground, and we don't really think about the sea or the water because we can only see the surface from where we stand. And we don't really reflect upon what's happening underwater. So if we see a surface that is flat, that is calm, we think that everything is fine, but the truth is it isn't. And also, it's really far away, but if there's without the ocean, we cannot breathe. We cannot have food or fruits, vegetables, our clothes, even. So I want to bring us closer to the water, to the underwater world. And that's it from me. Thank you very much.
Impresionante presentación.
What a stunning presentation and a beautiful message. Thank you very much. Now, let's connect with Dr. Andrea Marielle Artis, who is a biochemist. She is a bioethics and biochemistry graduate from the University of Buenos Aires in Argentina. Andrea, you now have the floor.
Buenas noches, acá estamos en mediodía.
Good afternoon. I would like to thank the organizing committee of the SIBI and especially my dear friend Marcelo Palacios, who always invites me to your events to share my ideas with you. So I will be sharing my screen now.
Bueno, les presento acá la foto de...
So this is a picture of the Faculty of Medicine where I work. I haven't been there for over a year and a half, and I really miss it. It's truly a beautiful faculty. This is not where I was trained, but I have been teaching here for over 30 years, so I hold it very close to my heart. As the title says, I work on the bioethical implications of the evaluation of health technologies. It's a little bit different from what we just saw in the previous presentation, which was truly gorgeous and interesting. So, what is this about? We know that technological progress has changed medicine profoundly. If we think about dialysis or organ transplants, bypasses, everything that has really improved our health and extended our lifetime, our life expectation. But as a consequence of that, there have been several dilemmas. So, what do we understand when we say health technology? It's defined as interventions that can be used to promote health, prevent, diagnose, or treat diseases, or for rehabilitation or long term care purposes. And that includes a lot of situations, not only medicines or drugs, medical devices, but also the procedures and the organization and support systems for the care. For example, even a prevention campaign could be regarded as a technology. This is the information provided by the International Network of Agencies of Health Technology Assessment, the NATA. And all of these technologies have been expanding for the past year. Some of them are very costly. And so the big concern for healthcare systems around many countries is how to assess the health technologies and see it as a cross-cutting issue to help decision makers in healthcare, the professionals who will be applying them and using them, those technologies, and lastly, the patients who will be benefiting from those technologies to solve their health issues. As we always say, if the disease only affects 1% of the population for that specific patient, it means 100%. So with this evaluation, we aim at assessing the intervention through the production, the synthesis, and a systematic revision of a wider range of scientific evidence, including, amongst many others, efficiency, effectiveness, the cost effectiveness, the organizational implications in implementing all of this, the social consequences, and the ethical considerations, but also legal considerations. This is the definition taken from the Eurassess group, from their recommendations and their guidelines, which are periodically published. There is a document of the Pan American Health Organization which considers the evaluation of technologies as a process of assessment. I will try and explain the difference between what we mean by assessment and by evolution later on. So it states that it's a systematic process to assess the properties, the effects, and the impact of health technology. It has to consider medical, social, ethical, and economical dimensions, and its main purpose is to provide information for it to be implemented in decision-making processes in healthcare. So these technologies and this assessment process, evolution process should be owned by the ones who will be making decisions. So we can see that that bioethics has not progressed or evolved hand in hand with technologies, and so these bioethical issues have become insufficient. The concern is that a lack of a correct bioethical recommendation could lead to technology being used or incorporated just because it's trendy or fashionable. Maybe it solves a health problem only partly for part of the population who can afford it. And so we will be talking about justice, equality, etc. here. It could also happen that a technology that is needed is not considered because it's just not considered to be that urgent. And that depends on the report that is issued. So health decision makers who will be addressing planning, financing, purchase, etc., have to use and have to have all of these information available. Not only the information in terms of the economy and science and so on and so forth, but also in terms of bioethics, because healthcare and public healthcare needs to be transparent, not only efficient and not only to have integrity. We know that the research has to be there has to be integrity in the research, but the results must be transparent. Why bioethical concerns in evaluating technologies is insufficient? We need more training of the stakeholders and the players that are involved throughout the process. And that's where you see the difficulties on how to combine bioethical issues with the scientific aspect with the assessment. Sometimes the role of bioethics is not well defined during the evaluation, and bioethics, it tends to be regarded as a technology that is applied and not as something that is providing support to assess the technology that we want to implement. So there is a lack of training of trained personnel, trained resources in both areas. Whenever we want to make a specific technology available to the public, there are different people intervening: the manufacturer, the financer, the disseminator, and so in the middle of all of these should be bioethics. If we didn't have the person who is financing, the person who is researching, the whole mechanism stops. So, as part of this mechanism, we need bioethics. We need someone who understands both scientific aspects but also humane issues. And that is the role of bioethics. Sometimes there are people who are trained but not sufficiently engaged in depending on the region. For example, in Latin America, we see that very often we lack people who are trained in understanding the specific issues of those countries.
Ya cambié.
To evaluate versus valuate. In English, they say, well, assessment and appraisal as well. There are two terms, therefore. To assess may focus on the technological aspect, whether it is safe, efficient, whether it is appropriate from a cost-benefit ratio. But when you appraise, you also try to incorporate human values, no? The value you give to certain aspects. So it implies take into account the moral consequences of the implementation and use of certain technology. And this ethical assessment that is sometimes included as a recommendation is sometimes not present in those reports handled by decision makers. So therefore, the people only takes into account other aspects, such as financial aspects, how to define the concerns bioethical concerns when evaluating health technologies. So these kind of congresses are very important to try to focus on the moral values and the bioethical aspects to be taken into account during the evaluation or assessment process, how to define them, who is going to define them, why bioethics should be integrated in the process of assessment in terms of health technology. Everything has to be included in the human resources. How to improve integration of bioethical aspects in the assessment process. How would integration of bioethics would impact on the assessment of health technologies and the decision-making processes. I'm going to share with you a specific case that is very current. I was going to present this talk last year, no? But then later on, well, we were all willing to travel to Gijón and share some beautiful times. But unfortunately, due to the pandemic, we could not make it. So we all kept our talks for later. And for many of us, the solution was the communication, the virtual communication, no? Through different platforms. So there was an explosion, if you wish, as a result of the COVID, to the use and development of apps, health apps, and magnification of artificial intelligence that also has to be assessed and thought as a health technology. And this makes us think that we are, embedded, we are already in this fourth industrial revolution, no? We are immersed in that fourth industrial revolution. Everything is evolving a lot in terms of computing, big data, social media, the use of big data to magnify the study of oceans has already been mentioned today. And as we enclose ourselves more and more, and we are more and more linked to digital systems, we have created what we call a digital twin through the searches, not technological searches. All those data are at the same time included in algorithms that offer us things that we like more and more. And they even result in biases, no? Instead of us looking for our own path to follow, technology will tell us, well, according to what you like, this would be the path you have to take. And this is not so clear for the population, generally speaking. And well, this has resulted in debates on fake news, for example, that have complicated life of many people. And the algorithm term has started to resonate, no? At the beginning, people started to talk about the DNA and to include the DNA in the vocabulary of people, and now algorithms are very popular. So there are many, many health apps that you can download for free and you can use, but that means that you upload sometimes sensitive data. No, you upload them on a web. It is not a cloud. It is somebody's computer. So, well, yeah, but those data are hosted somewhere. And this revolution, the fourth industrial revolution, can be framed in what is called GNR revolution. It is a revolution in the field of genetics, nanotechnology, and robotics, GNR. A good example of this here in Argentina has been in the media is the case of the most expensive drug worldwide, that is Zolgensma, to treat AME condition. All this has to do with the great evolution of the use of the artificial intelligence in health, in the health field, in medicine, and the growth is exponential, as you know. So what happens then? Well, we have concepts traditionally linked to bioethics, as for example, the analysis of situations to principle of life, euthanasia, abortion, informed consentment, distribution of resources, privacy, confidentiality. And then we also have other aspects that have to do with issues that are already present in cybernetic means, for example, economy, education, fast communication between banks to facilitate wires, money wires or transfers, communication, media, politics, and trade. If we merge those two universes, what we see is that many of them may be linked to each other. So the union or the link between bioethics and cyber ethics is something I want to propose. And I have coined a new term, bio-cyber ethics. This is my proposal, because we may have telemedicine, for example, that has to do with the use of an informed consent that is going to be through electronic means or computing means. So maybe we could think about redefining the scope of bioethics to include the consequences, foreseeable or not, of these GNR revolutions. So maybe we can think that bioethics is like the science of the cellular interstitium, the space between cell and cell, the intercellular space, and every cell understands that you can reach up to a certain point and there you meet another cell and you have to respect each other, okay? There should be mutual respect, no? The respect, the space of the other, the time of the other. And if we respect each other, then we will live all in peace and we will live together and we will all progress. But when that respect is disturbed, for example, because of cancer, and the cell advances, obviously many problems come up and freedoms are lost. So if we transfer that into cyberspace, sometimes we see that the other is a virtual entity. So we may, delete the wills of the other with just a click. It would be good to analyze it and include it in bioethics. So my proposal is the use of the term bio-cyber ethics to refer to the ethics that is linked to life issues regarding to robotics, nanotechnology, genetics, and also the use of artificial intelligence through information and communication technologies. And also, even when we use technology to communicate to each other, on the other side of the screen, there are human beings. So the communication means may be different, but there are human beings on the other side of the screen, and they have feelings and emotions. What are the concepts or concerns to be included in this bio-cyber ethics? For example, how to relate the medicine based on evidence with the contributions by artificial intelligence in medicine. How do we understand big data and the real world data in medicine? How to contribute to credibility and sustainability of artificial intelligence in medicine? Who will be responsible for the wrong diagnosis if the diagnosis was reached when using artificial intelligence? Which are the main regulations every country should promote, ensuring equity in terms of access to health? Who is responsible for the damage to a medical device controlled by artificial intelligence if it is hacked? We have to maybe include a list of conflicts, what medical aspects can be feasible to be simulated and which one not. Is it ethical to simulate by means of algorithms the critical thinking of the physician? Is it ethical to lose our privacy and to grant our data to the web? And finally, some recommendations, because obviously this will make us reflect a lot. It is necessary to promote dialogue and empowerment in terms of cyber ethics and artificial intelligence, and also the use of common sense and critical thinking. We have to try to promote regulatory policies. Philosophers, bioethical experts, scientists, and physicians should work together to ensure the use of artificial intelligence in medicine, always safeguarding the autonomy of patients. Users that are going to be using new technologies. We are not denying new technologies because this technological revolution is also the revolution of the human being, but we have to go step by step. Conclusion, promotion of education and dialogue among all actors or players that are part in the evaluation process of technologies. And we have to try to minimize the moral conflicts that may come up in this process. Technological advance is part of our evolution as human beings, but consensus for its the reasonable use is part of that evolution, because we cannot forget the other. Because what we can see is that technological evolution is easier than the evolution in terms of respect and living together, where all opportunities are promoted or boosted. And I also wanted to say finally is that when you learn another language, you always learn the verb to be. That's the first verb, because you acknowledge the other, because I am, you are, he is, we are, you are, and they are. All have the same opportunities of being, and that is what we have to remember. So greetings from Buenos Aires, a bit cold, but sunny. Thank you. Thank you so much, Andrea. Well, many questions you have posed and a lot of things to reflect upon. And at the heart of it all, the proposal of that new term, bio-cyber ethics, no? It is a concept that undoubtedly we will have to think about it with this name or another name, but we will have to think about it, of course. Well, we will now start with some Q&A for the three speakers. I'm going to kick off this Q&A session, but first of all, I'm going to try to sum up the presentations. I will do it specifically in a specific way, and appealing to one idea, the idea or the question sent by Isutaki Futaki, to live together, what can we do? Because I think that after all, that is the issue that gathers us here, that is of our concern, and that we have to think about together. In the first two presentations, the speakers talked about the sea, and I loved it. And it made me think that, as Borges used to say, if you look at it, you see it for the first time always. Or as Octavio Paz said about the sea, its movement is its shape. That is, you always get close to such an attractive mystery, and that somehow represents that umbilical cord that joins us together. So thank you very much to both speakers for sharing such an interesting topic with us. And then with Andrea, I see a very clear connection because some of the ideas shared by Alma in terms of biotechnology, because after all, what we're talking about is the technological development, the results of scientific work, and how all this would have an impact on each of us in social terms, cultural terms, economic terms. And to sum it all up, how do we want to live together? So there is also a political scenario, no? Okay, so those are the ideas that I wanted to share with you. And now I will pose a couple of questions that we got through Twitter by through the hashtag SIBI 2021. I'm going to share the questions and put them up here on the screen so that you can also see them. Carmen Castro asks a question for Alma. Could you comment on the applications in the animal welfare of the project? Yes, thank you very much, Carmen. Can you hear me, Edgar? I don't know whether you can hear me, Edgar. Hello, Edgar. Yes. Can you hear me? Yes, yes, sure. Thank you, Carmen, for your question. Well, in fact, an important part of the application of biotechnology on animal cultures is to try, or we aim at having the animals in their optimal welfare, because that is also part of ethics, no? How we can grow great amounts of animals in a sustainable way, but also that those animals are within their optimal physiological characteristics, not only for consumption, but also for their welfare. In our case, one of the factors that has to do with intensive culture of fish is the stress, no? Some big amounts of animals that are not living in their natural environments. And what we want, or we aim at, is to reduce their stress to minimum levels and that they are as comfortable as possible in the facilities. So with our projects, for example, when we use probiotics, we have seen the reduction in terms of the stress. The same as in the mammals, we have seen there is an axis, bowel, brain, and all the microorganisms that we have in the bowel affect our brain. And stress is a very important part of it, and it is regulated by hypothalamus and hypophysis. We're also trying to see whether the probiotics that we add also affect that axis and reduces the level of stress of animals, contributing therefore to a better welfare. Thank you so much. Second question. I'm going to share it here again. Says, I would like to ask Alma, see if the diet of algae applied to that fish can also be applied to preterm babies. Thank you very much, Miriam, for your question. Well, in fact, I know very little about human beings, really. I am specialized in animals, no, in water animals. Whether we could adapt it to babies, to preterm babies, well, I don't know. It depends on how well or the algae can be digested by babies, no, and how babies can be capable of absorbing all those nutrients provided by those algae. So I could not tell, really. I'm sorry. It is true that in the case of fish, we have to look at the species of algae and the percentages that we can add, because not all algae species provide the same nutrients. Not all of them can be digested so well. And that also has to do with the culture system, no? In the case of babies, well, the same would apply, I guess. Thank you so much, Alma. I think a topic that has been touched upon by 3 speakers has been this distinction when talking about sustainability between anthropocentrism and epocentrism. When we talk about focusing on economics and our welfare as human beings, we talk about anthropocentrism, no? Another idea launched by Aki I, which is a bit more ecocentric, no, more ecological, let's say. Andrea, on this topic, do you think this ecocentric perspective or approach has a place in a biocybernetics field? Yes, yes, of course. In fact, it also has to do with the concept of digital ecosystem. So the ecological concept has been transferred into the cybernetic world. However, I do think that it has not been explored deeply, or it has been explored in a different way, different from what we may call a real ecosystem. Yes, of course. And with my students, sometimes I have that problem, no, when I use many metaphors, no, because sometimes we use so many metaphors that we forget what we were referring to at the very beginning, no? Sutaki, a question for you. I remember once that a student, a very young student, came to me. I was teaching ethics, and he came with me with a concern. He asked me about my opinion regarding life outside this planet and the possibility of contacting with those outer beings, if you wish. And it was weird, that question, but I remember that my answer then was, but why do we need to find another life somewhere else when we have so much life here on this planet? We could try to find other ways of communicating with other beings that are already existing on this planet. I think, for example, the look of the whale, no, that you showed, the invitation to this dance, no, with the marine beings, no, that you shared with us. I think it all refers to a path towards a different kind of communication, but communication that will not take place in our own terms. We will not be using words, a translator, an interpreter, or an electronic translator that allows us to reach those ideas. I don't know. What could you please elaborate on that? How to communicate with each other and how to communicate with non-human animals? Yes, thank you. Well, I think that the truth, there isn't much difference in terms of communicating with human beings or with other species, non-human species, because after all, even though sometimes we try to communicate with another human being, but we do not communicate. So as vibration travels faster in a water environment, and as we do not speak the same language, we speak from feelings, let's say, from emotions. We use telepathy, if you wish. So for sure, I don't know if something has happened to you that all of a sudden you are thinking of someone and all of a sudden you get a phone call from that person, no? It is telepathy, if you wish, no? And that is communication as well. You think of someone and you get a phone call from that person. That's why it is important to be here and now, okay? Because that is how you can communicate. And we human beings, because we have such huge brains, and we are so smart for so many things, we change our brains very fast because it is as the brain wants to be in a comfortable place and does not want to leave that comfort zone. But in fact, I do not think that is the reality. And to be comfortable with yourself, you change your own reality. So I do not see such a huge difference in terms of the communication with human beings or with other non-human beings, no? Because, for example, I remember there is a study that referred that to the fact that when you talk to plants and you sing to the plants and all that, then the flowers blossom and all that. I don't know whether I have answered your question or no. I do not see a separation, a need separation between communication with human beings or communication with animals. And I think the communication with animals has to be much more open. Otherwise, they will never come to you. And that is a difficulty with the human beings, no? Because there are so many doors, so many walls to overcome. Yes. I think this kind of gives us a therapeutic perspective. We have to learn from animals, no? And we have to open up to animals and learn from them. Thank you so much, Aifutaki. Another question on Twitter with the hashtag SIBI 2021. I will show it now here on a slide. And it is for Andrea. And the question is, after the pandemic, the people are trying to talk to doctors through video calls or pictures. What about the confidentiality of data or data confidentiality? I am trying to understand the question, says the speaker. Because of the pandemic now, everybody's talking to the doctor through phone calls or video conferences, pictures, whatever. Is there an issue in terms of data confidentiality? Yes, of course. And you have to talk to the physician about data and who has access to those data, no, the video calls, etc., etc. It depends very much on the legislation framework of every country. There are countries that have more strict regulations, and this is where there is a merge between legal norms, social aspects, ethical aspects, etc., etc. Because there are many aspects linked to that confidentiality. For example, where do you do that video call? What platform do you use? If you go to a doctor and you enter the office, that office, physical office, has certain privacy, you know, some walls, some ceilings, a level. The patient talks to the doctor, and everything is kept inside, you know, in between those four walls. When you do a video call, where is the doctor? You don't know whether the doctor is in a room with other people or other people are listening to the conversation with the patient. Where is the patient sitting? This has happened with psychological consultations, now when you have to open up to the doctor, or even from your home, and your partner listens to all the conversation. Imagine. And some people who have to go, I don't know, to the car to have that conversation, no, certain private conversation. So you can know who you're talking to, but you do not know what is happening surrounding that person or behind the screen where the doctor is. So those are aspects that have to be discussed, and we have to be transparent. Transparency is very relevant.
Le habré contestado.
Yo creo que sí, porque
Yes, I think you have. I think that point, that's the thing that's playing a relevant role is the idea of how we go about the informed consent. And I think it's important not to forget that it, rather than just a document, it's a situation in which we uh, consent, we give our consent in an informed manner. And it can be an oral consent, it can be a written one, it can be a given in many ways. But if you get that consent, I think we're going to to learn to live together, to coexist, as Ifutaki was saying. On the other hand, there's thinking around how spaces help us cordon off our symbolism. Erdin Hoffman provided a perspective of the presentation of the individual in daily life. And he was saying that to understand a sign, you need the context. The context says it all. Because that's where meaning takes place. Roland Potts used to say that when you go to a restaurant and the plates, the food is so minimalist and it's all empty, um, that's what they're trying. That's their statement. So everything has a meaning in their context. There are many things that we could talk about, that we could address. I'm thankful for the ideas shared by Andrea, Alma, and I. Thank you very much indeed for everything you've shared with us, and I hope that you progress in your projects as much as possible so that whenever we meet next time, we can find out about everything you will have achieved by then. So thank you very much, and with this, we conclude our roundtable. Thank you.
Bueno, muchas gracias, Edgar, por tu.
Thank you, Edgar, for conducting this debate. Thank you to Marcelo Palacios for the invitation. And I extend my gratitude to my two colleagues. I really enjoyed their talks. Thank you, Edgar, also from my end, for your capacity to find the interconnections between three things that seemed totally unrelated, and you were able to make us see the connection. And I would like to thank my two colleagues for such a wonderful talk. Thank you very much.
Bueno, muchísimas gracias.
Thank you very much, everyone. And I hope to see you in person soon.
Enhorabuena a todos los ponentes.
Congratulations to all the speakers. Yes, I was saying that there's a question from the audience. Could you please stay and answer it? So I have two questions. One is for Alma. When you talked about 3D materials, you talked about biomaterials that could have 3D applications. Could you elaborate on that a little bit, if you can? And my other question was for Futaki. What do you feel when you swim with animals, and what do you think animals think when they swim next to you? Did you understand my question? Shall I say it in English? So those were my two questions. Futaki, did you understand my question?
With the sí. Thank you. Gracias a todos.
So with regards to 3D applications of the materials, it refers to the creation of new materials using molecules or compounds obtained from the sea. So you would obtain biodegradable materials for 3D applications, and they could also be used in medicine. You could use those biomaterials with 3D printers to make grafts, bone grafts, or any prosthetic that is bio adapted to the human body. From an engineering point of view, it entails creating new materials that, unlike plastic materials, are degradable, biodegradable. They can be recycled and reused for the same purpose.
Ahora respondo yo.
So I will answer now. I think the question was how I feel in the water, right? Well, I try not to feel special. I want animals to feel as if I were one of them. So even if they approach me, if they start playing with me, I play as if that was part of my normal playing. So they do their normal activities, because yes, I react. If I react with "Wow, thank you," and so on, they will react saying that's strange because that's what we do every day. It's normal for them. So my reaction comes afterwards whenever I see the picture, all the videos.
Muy bien. Pues si no hay ninguna intervención.
Great. So if there are no more questions, thank you all. Thank you to the speakers and the moderator who has been brilliant and phenomenal. I thank Alma, Andrea, and Futaki, for such an exceptional debate. Thank you very much. You should know that you have contributed a little bit to the knowledge of science and of real life throughout the world, and we are very happy to have you here and to talk about issues that affect us all. And I hope to see you soon without the pandemic. Thank you very much.
Pues nada. Buenas noches.